Philadelphia is truly the place to be this summer, so add the Match Room to your list. This is a limited-time sports lounge experience at Four Seasons Hotel Philadelphia, opening June 11th through July 19th. Located on the 59th floor, the space has been designed for watching international soccer matches. There's elevated food and drink options, including dishes you can share, and the best views of the city. Plan your visit now. Make those reservations on fourseasons.com/Philadelphia/dining and experience the Match Room before it's gone.
This is Your City Could Be Better, because it could be. I'm David Plotz. If you love your city and still complain about it, you're in the right place. Salt Lake County, the vast northern Utah county that holds a third of the state's population, as well as its biggest city, Salt Lake City, has 511 parks. There is a park where you can go hang gliding. There are 40 parks with pickleball courts. There are 28 parks that have dog parks, so a park within a park. And no one in Salt Lake County knew these facts, not even, I think, the Parks Department itself, until CityCast Salt Lake host Ali Vallarta took it upon herself to visit every single park and catalog its amenities, examine its bathroom, if it had a bathroom, and give it a grade. And this epic journey took Ali 2 years, and the result is a magnificent new tool for her Salt Lake neighbors, allowing them to find parks where they can play basketball or disc golf. I played disc golf at a Salt Lake park once because I found a park that had disc golf, or play in a splash pad. So would your city be better with better parks, or at least with a better parks guide like the one Ali created? Ali Vallarta, welcome back to Your City Could Be Better.
It's so good to be here.
So a few
I brought
years
data this time.
You have data. You are a completist. And a few years ago, you had another completist journey in Salt Lake, which is that you had a drink at every single bar in the county. Mm-hmm. Why did you decide to follow up that boozy journey with a parks catalog?
I mean, part of the reason I went to every bar in Salt Lake County is because I just wanted to get out of my normal routine. And it began as a New Year's resolution. And so I had visited 216 bars, had at least 216 drinks in 365 days. And people were maybe dazzled, maybe confused by that journey. And then when the next New Year's rolled around, a lot of our listeners were like, okay, what's your next New Year's resolution now? Mm-hmm. This has become sort of a thing. And I decided to visit every park because I felt like in so many ways, bars are third spaces, and they teach us a lot about our communities. That said, bars aren't free. Does that make them true third spaces? Like, parks are sort of the ultimate. And I announced on the show in true Ali Vallarta fashion that I would go to every park in Salt Lake County before I knew how many there were. All that to say, going to every park was so much harder than going to every bar because there were 511. And you mentioned that no one had really done a census like this before. And the reason for that is that within Salt Lake County, which home to 1.3 million people, there are 23 different cities, which is sort of absurd. And all those cities manage their own park system, and they manage it differently. And then the county itself has a park system that it manages differently. So this was also just about getting all of the information and putting it in one place. And that in and of itself was a project, let alone then going to all of them and cataloging.
Is 511 parks for Salt Lake County a good number of parks? Did you come away thinking, wow, we have so many parks? Or yeah, we have an okay number of parks?
No, we have a lot. I think we have a lot. And actually, one of the things that I learned is that a quarter of households in our county can't walk to a park, can't walk 10 minutes to a park, which sounds bad. But then, of course, like all data, if you flip it, that means that 3/4 of people across our county can walk 10 minutes and be at a park. And I think that's kind of a dream. And we know that year after year, when our city surveys people, when our state surveys people about growth, the number one thing in Utah that we hear from residents is green space. That's our number one most important priority.
What is the benefit for you and your neighbors of cataloging and rating all the parks? How does that help Salt Lake for you to have done that? And also, I guess you should say how you rated them. What metrics did you rate them by?
Sure. Yeah. So what I did is I made a Google form and I put together a list of roughly 26 different amenities. And that's everything from the super expected, benches or picnic tables, courts of sorts. And then some of the less expected stuff like bathrooms, water fountains, lighting after dark, dog parks. And fundamentally, the reason that I wanted to measure all of these things is because, the famous saying goes, you can't manage what you don't measure. If we don't know what we've got, then we don't know what to ask for. And I think that's really important because parks are free because they're not. We pay for them with our tax dollars, which means that they belong to the public. And so I think we should have really good intel about the things that we're paying for and that we use a lot so that when they are missing things, we know what to ask for.
So let's get into some of the findings. Do better parks correlate with richer neighborhoods? If you are in a richer neighborhood in Salt Lake, do you have a better park, or is it just not that simple?
No, this is one of the most interesting things that I found. When the city was built, not how wealthy it is sort of my general sense of what the predictor is for how good the parks are going to be, because it's sort of a land use thing. But I also think
Wait, meaning the newer the city, the better the parks, or the older the city, the better the parks?
Not necessarily either, but the availability of land, the way that the city was cut around, the cost of land, the decisions that the city made about how to use land. Some of the newer cities have some better amenities, but I would not say that the newer cities have better parks. I actually think some of the best parks are in the older cities. And fundamentally, that is just because they have older trees. And nothing beats an old tree. Nothing.
Better shade, more handsome.
It's more charming.
Right. So one of the things that I think about parks, I think a lot about parks. I live in DC is a great park city. It's a really, you will go toe to toe with you guys anytime. But the parks that I use most are not necessarily the parks that have the most amenities. They're the parks that have the most life. I mean, you were asking parents how would they improve a park? Mm-hmm. If you were designing the perfect park, what would it be? What elements does it need to have?
So for me, David, something that regular CityCast Salt Lake listeners know about me is that I am a single issue public bathroom voter.
Yeah.
The candidate that can build public bathrooms in my city is my candidate. And I put on this amenity list bathrooms. And I think there are some people who kind of scoffed at me when I did, because they were like, okay, queen, weird choice. Because when you think about parks, you don't necessarily think about bathrooms. But I think in life, you don't think about a bathroom until you need it. And then you're totally screwed. And the thing that I found through this census, which I think is shocking, is that 69% of the parks in Salt Lake County, that's 69% of 511 parks, have no year-round bathroom access.
Ooh.
That is an indictment, in my opinion. Especially in a place that wants to host the Olympics in 2034 and has done it in the past. Where have people been peeing? In bushes, in coffee shops where they have to buy a muffin in order to do it? And I know, again, this is becoming such a national issue as urban issues are talked about more and more in our country. But the public bathroom thing to me is shocking. And there are cities that have done public bathrooms really well. And they are, again, not the wealthiest cities.
I'm very much with you on bathrooms and parks, that a park cannot be a successful park unless it has a clean and open bathroom. So those two qualities are very important as well. It is not enough to have a bathroom. The bathroom actually needs to be clean, which means that it needs a certain amount of maintenance, and it needs to be open. There's no experience worse than you get to a park and you're like, oh, thank God they've got a bathroom. I really need to pee. And you get there and it's locked. And you're like, why is it locked?
Well, and sometimes it's locked because it has a hideous sign that says closed for the season, to which I say, what season? Kids want to slide down a slide in the winter into a pile of snow. Parks, this journey was year round for me. I was going to some of these parks in the dead of winter with snow on the ground, the very little that we had in Utah this winter. And I saw tons of families out there hanging out, bundled up, running around. So when did we decide that parks only are a summer thing? I don't think that that's how people feel.
Okay, so you're designing a perfect park. So a good public bathroom, a couple of other things that you think are essential or highly desirable.
I mean, shade is huge. And if it can't be in the form of mature
Agreed.
trees, then you've got to erect it. You've got to put up sails or something to give people shade. I think perfect parks have the standard things, water fountains, picnic tables, etc. I think a nice big grassy area is good, especially in the West where our turf is being pulled out because we don't have a lot of water. And then I also think a good park has sort of like random delights, whether it's like a weird cat statue. I went to this one park, David, where they had a scale where you could weigh yourself. And I think it was because this park used to be like some site of commerce in the West.
Mm-hmm.
And so there was a scale that you could stand on and it would tell you how much you weighed in various objects. So like you weigh this many apples, or you weigh this many pigs, or you weigh like this many chickens or ducks, which is an absolutely insane thing to do. Perfect.
Mm-hmm.
That's like a perfect random park amenity. How many bushels of peaches do you weigh?
I weigh 3 more bushels than I want to. So the city where I live, Washington, D.C., has a lot of parks, but it primarily has this wonderful urban forest that runs right through it. That is just it's a wild, magnificent, deciduous forest in a kind of stream valley.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't really have, it has some trails in it and bathrooms here and there. It doesn't have playgrounds in it.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't have, pickleball courts in it. Mm-hmm. But it's a magnificent park. How important is nature to the park experience, or not at all?
I think it's huge. I mean, nature relaxes us. We know that when we feel a sense of wonder or awe, there are all kinds of things that happen in our bodies. A park without mature trees, a park without the feeling that you are escaping an urban environment to it, like a park that doesn't feel like an oasis, I think is just like some weird millennial bar in Denver. You know what I mean? It's like AstroTurf and giant Jenga, which is not a park. I'm sorry. And so I do think nature is a huge piece. And we know that like there are all like the nature piece is what makes parks not just about entertainment, but about public health. And I see them as an aspect of public health because we know that they've been studied over and over again, and that there are various social determinants that come from having parks in your neighborhood that relate to public health. Like kids who have a park down the street tend to sleep better at night. They tend to have less screen time, et cetera, et cetera. So I don't think you can understate the nature piece. And that's why I hate to dog on parks in the suburbs that don't have mature trees. But the mature tree is always going to be the thing that people genuinely seek. I think they can put up with no pickleball court, but we can't put up with no trees.
The other one, sorry, I know this is your parks journey, but I just want to hit on my parks journey.
Please.
Which is a trash can that is regularly emptied. Very depressing to go to a park where the trash cans are not emptied in a consistent way.
Yeah. And I think like, again, part of the reason that I think this journey was interesting is because it became an invitation to people all across our county to think about what they want in a park. Like not just to accept what they've got, but think about what they want. And, you can trace that notion all the way back to like the American political system. Think about what you want, not just what you've got. But like sometimes, when you go to like a bathroom at a Target or something and they're like, tell us how this bathroom was. Like, how would you rate it on smiley faces? What do you need? Like, I found at none of these parks a sign that said, this is who manages this park. If you have inquiries or requests or you see an issue, here's who you reach out to. And maybe I wasn't looking closely enough. I'm sure there are a handful out there. But by and large, that's not the methodology. And I think, we make podcasts that think heavily about what our cities could be doing better and what we should be asking of them and where they can like find their power in a broken federal system. Right, and so this to me is like sort of knitted into that, where it's like, well, tell us how to reach you. And that's why another piece of this map that was really important to me was saying who's responsible for the parks, so that people who go know that they can be barking up the right tree if the trash can is overflowing. I mean, the thing I want to ask you about is like the family friendly piece, because I don't have kids. and you do. And so you have taken a kid to a park before. And I came up, I'll tell you, like I came up with this, I tried to come up with a family-friendly Hall of Fame. So I made a list of the things that I think any parent would be looking for, which is bathrooms, playground, picnic tables, water fountain, and then a splash pad because it's hot. It gets really hot here in the summer. And I found that less than 3% of all parks in our county had all five. And actually, no park in Salt Lake City had all five. So then I was spinning out because I'm like, wait a minute. Utah has so many kids that our average age is like 31. How is it that so few of our parks feel actually designed for families?
I don't think it has to have. I understand why you include all of those elements. And I guess the one that seems slightly gratuitous to me is splash pad. Although I think you need to have a playground. Obviously, you need a playground. Picnic tables, I think picnic tables and splash pads are not the essentials. To me, the essentials are playground, shade, bathroom. Playground, shade, bathroom. The main enemy at all parks for kids is the sun. Is that it's just like when if it is too hot and there's no shade, you end up with absolute misery. And I think also a park has to have, so water is important, but also has to have nearby access to some place you can like hydrate or sugar up a child. Yeah. So maybe it's that an ice cream man, a Good Humor truck comes by, or maybe it's that it's right near a 7-Eleven or something. But that also is an element, is because the experience of being in a park with a kid is like the kid loves it, and then the kid is in heat stroke, is miserable, hates everything, wants what he hates, and you just need to get the child cooler, more hydrated, and some sugar in the system. And so that has to be nearby too.
It's interesting to hear you talk about what the kids need, because the other thing that happened when I asked parents about what would make a park more family friendly is that a lot of them talked about their own needs. And I was like, oh, sure. Yeah, I've once again misidentified parenting as being entirely about the child.
Right.
And like, as a non-parent, it's so easy to do that. But like, okay, my kid could play at this park for 3 hours, but if there's not a bench for me to sit on that's also in the shade, we can't be here for 3 hours. I can't just stand here for 3 hours. And like, even I have friends who are from Minneapolis and they're like, oh, you want to know what's a family-friendly park? One where I can get a beer. And I'm like, low key, that makes sense to me. Like, if you're having fun too, then that means you can be there longer. And that it's truly about the whole family, not just the kid. Because again, I have watched many kids like run and jump on a pile of ice and dirt and slide down it and be totally gleeful. I don't know how much they care if the slide is like an inch taller or whatever, what color it is.
So we've talked about individual parks, but you examined parks systematically. You looked at 511 parks in an entire system or a bunch of systems. How would you improve the overall park system of Salt Lake County rather than any individual park?
Yeah. I mean, this feels like it's so often the case with any issue, but our various departments should be communicating with each other more, because there are places in this county where I'm not actually quite sure what city I'm in. And they feel like little Bermuda triangles of municipal governance. And I think we can't expect people to know where they are, who's responsible, and what the limits are of what they can ask for. So the fact that like on each city's website, their maps only cover their park system. And then similarly, our county only covers its park system. That's why this map that I made is so groundbreaking. And I think why so many people in this county have been stoked about it, because they're like, yeah, across the street from me is technically a different city. But that doesn't mean that I don't want to go to their parks too. And so as we like think about growth, we have to think about regionality. Like we've got to break out of these like silly little boundaries and think more about how we govern in regions. And maybe that's just really top of mind for me, because some of the bigger issues that we face in the West, like water, require that sort of approach. But I think even at a really small scale with things like parks, we've got to have more of that approach.
That's good. I'm going to add one other you already mentioned earlier, which seems to me really important for the system. I think your point about accountability and knowing who to talk to about the park is really important as well. So that that part of running a good park system is actually being responsive to the citizens, and so making your website or whatever it ever assigns in the park clearly indicate here is how you give us feedback about this park seems important.
And it builds a better democracy. Like if you think of it as a project of democracy, like when people think about governance, when they think about politics and elected officials, I think they picture people in suits yelling at each other. And when I think about governance, I picture park pavilions. And that's because I'm not normal. But I also think like, what a better world we could build if we knew what to ask for, if we knew what to be happy about and not just mad about, and if we understood what good governance can do for us. And I think that like on a really esoteric level, that is what this project is actually about, right?
With that in mind, has your census evoked any kind of response from the powers that be? Have parks departments responded? Have mayors responded? Has the citizenry risen up in support of Ali Vallarta's park census?
I think a little bit. I think we're getting there. I've definitely had outreach from like community councils and community like guidance boards. I've heard from some cities that they think this is cool. I've had a couple cities reach out to tell me about updates. So like, oh, you must have been here a year ago, but we actually have this new playground now. And so I go and update the map, and that's super cool. I've yet to see any sort of like policy change come down, but I also acknowledge that policy doesn't work that fast. And so I've thought about taking this to like the next step and actually putting together some recommendations for cities. And hopefully they would be open to that.
You should 100% do that.
Yeah.
By the way, it's that episode. I just happened to be looking at this data because it's one of my job, but that episode is the most listened to episode you've ever done. And that the page is the most visited page on CityCast Salt Lake website. So yeah, it's getting used. Can we both name our favorite park in the world? I just remembered my favorite park in the world.
Oh my gosh.
Name your favorite park in the world. I'll name mine.
Mine's so like, okay.
Mine is Laurelhurst Park in Portland, Oregon. I just think that park, have you ever been there? Incredible urban park. Just so beautiful and soothing, and also has amenities, and it's just right in the heart of residential neighborhood. It's incredible park. Yeah.
I mean, am I allowed to say a park that's not in Utah?
Yeah.
Okay. People won't throw tomatoes at me when I leave my house. It's Central Park in New York. I mean, the fact that like, if you've ever read the book Mannahatta, which is such a joy to read, and kind of walks you through visually the way that Manhattan went from being this lush island to being what it is now. The fact that we have Central Park is a choice. And I am like so interested in the ramifications of political choices. And I think that's why I'm so interested in local governance, because everything that we do is a choice. And like the fact that we have Central Park and that people travel from all over the world to go to a park in the middle of one of the biggest cities on earth is a choice, is the result of a choice. And that's amazing. Like that park is unbelievable.
Right. And actually what's incredible is like if you went to people planning the city today and you're like, well, we're going to take 500 acres, probably 800 acres in the middle of Manhattan, the most valuable real estate on earth. And we're going to just put a bunch of trees in it and a pond and skating rink and softball fields. That's what we're going to do. And every real estate developer would be like, that's crazy. This is worth trillions of dollars. But actually, the fact that they set that aside is what made that whole area of Manhattan the most desirable place for property owners practically on the planet.
Yeah.
Like without Central Park, there's no Central Park views, for example.
No. And we know that once you destroy that green space, it is almost impossible to ever get it back.
Right. Right.
There would be no world where we would figure out how to buy up all the buildings and carve out Central Park again. And I think that's why people get so upset when parks are slowly cut away, slowly siphoned off, slowly lost to development. Again, this is really about growth. And when it comes to green space, that decision is irreparable.
All right, Ali, what can listeners in other cities take away from our conversation to make their own city better?
I would imagine that anybody who listens to any CityCast podcast in their city or this podcast is very aware that we are in the Zoran Mamdani era. And that, I think, is going to be defined by an era of thinking about public goods. And I feel like we haven't been in an era of thinking about public goods this hard for a really long time. And I think this project is kind of doing that. Like, I think it's an invitation to examine the things that are available to you in your backyard, to closely look at the things that you are paying for that you might forget that you're paying for when you pay your taxes. Ask for what you want, make the most of it. And then I also think there's this other layer, which is the next time you're thinking about making a New Year's resolution, I, Ali Vallarta, invite you to break free from like the incredibly boring self-help paradigm and just do something zany and adventurous instead.
Yes. +1 that. Not that I follow that advice myself, but I like the advice. Let's go to our word on the street segment, Ali, our other additive segment. I would like us to debate. I live in Washington, D.C. Green, humid, hot, wet as a city. You live in Salt Lake City. Red, dusty, hot, dry.
Yeah.
Who is better? Which is better? Discuss.
We have this expression in Utah that you hear. Well, there's two that you hear all the time related to this. And one is whenever it rains, people say, we're grateful for the moisture. And then the other one is that whenever people talk about how hot it is outside, they say, well, at least it's a dry heat. And I think the glorification of dry heat is total bullshit. I think it's an absolute nightmare. I am watching my body age into that of a lizard living here. I grew up in Florida, David, like lush, humid, couldn't check the mail without coming back to the front door and your shirt is dripping wet. I miss that every single day. Sometimes, David Plotz, I bend over around the start of winter to pick something up off the floor and I feel that my lower back is ripping apart because of how dry my skin is.
Wait, so just so I
humid
understand.
And green all day long. If
so
I could bewitch something in this city, it would be humidity.
But so humid is good for the skin. Is that what you're telling me?
Yes. That's why you want to put your moisturizer on while your skin's still wet.
Okay.
What, you want to live out here and be a lizard?
Well, I've never lived in the Mountain West, but I've always had this fantasy of living in the Mountain West. And one of the reasons I have the fantasy of living in the Mountain West is whenever I breathe the air, I get off a plane in Salt Lake or in Phoenix or in wherever else, Las Vegas, and you breathe that air and you're like, oh, it is clean and dry, crisp, dry. Maybe it's not clean.
I was going to say,
I love the dry. I love dry air. I love it. I love the kind of cool crispness of a dry desert night where you get, things in DC, like, during the day, it's always going to be hot in almost any city in America in the summer. But at night, the thing about DC is like this moisture sticks in the air and you just go to bed clammy and you wake up clammy. And unless you're running your AC full tilt, which just full confession, I do. Unless you're running your AC full tilt, you feel disgusting all the time. And you feel like everything around you is rotting and molding. Your own body is developing some kind of black mold just as you sit there. And I love the idea of instead of just like that the night falls and every temperatures drop instantly. And it's just, you have that in this, you can see the sky because humidity also hazes everything up. So I will take dry. I'll take dry. We can switch. Ali Vallarta, host of CityCast Salt Lake. Thank you for coming on Your City Could Be Better. You should listen to Ali every weekday on CityCast Salt Lake.
Good to see you. It's good to be here.
That's all for today's episode of Your City Could Be Better. I'm your host, David Plotz. Our producers are Lizzie Goldsmith, Aria Bracci, Priyanka Tilve, Ali Vallarta, and Emily Means. Our music is by Carl Christensen. If you are enjoying the show, tell your friends, rate the show, leave us a review wherever you get your podcast. We'll be back next week with another conversation about how your city could be better. I will see you at the park.